I'm Meaghan, and you are listening to the True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book creators and supporters. It's February 26, 2021. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. On this episode, I chat with Meaghan Carter about Girlhaven. The podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, and it's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. Meaghan is a Toronto-based comic artist and colorist. She's worked with Oni Press, IDW, and Harper Alley. In 2014, she completed the urban fantasy webcomic Take Off and is currently working on Godslave, an Egyptian mythology action webcomic. She teaches cartooning for illustration at Max the Mutt College of Animation. Girlhaven, now available in stores, is described as 3 years ago, Ash's mom left home and never returned, leaving behind a husband and child and a shed full of mystical curiosities related to the all-girl fantasy world she created as a child couratress. One day, Ash invites a new group of friends from Pride Club over, and they try one of the spells to enter couratress. To their amazement, they're all transported to a magical realm filled with human-sized talking animals who are fiercely protected of the world and are ready to fight to protect it. So, without further ado, here's my chat with Meaghan Carter about Girlhaven. Meaghan Carter, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate your time. What I normally do to start off the interview is ask the creator about their first comic book. So I'm wondering if you remember, what was the first comic book that you read?
Stretching back as far as I can, the first thing I remember reading as a physical comic book would I think it's a Sonic the Hedgehog comic, because you're going back to the mid to early 90s there. That's the first thing I'm really conscious of in terms of first comic that I read cover to cover and really remember enjoying. I think that's closer to Shonen Jump around probably 2003, 2004. So that's around middle school, where I was really conscious of what I was reading and what I was enjoying.
Cool. That's good stuff. Good influences there, that's for sure. So I'm wondering, as an artist, who influences your work today?
Today, it's a whole menagerie of things. I grew up in the manga boom, and that's very steeped in my work and my style. I think if you take a look at that, but right now I'm a big fan of Dan Mora, who is doing, I believe, a Batman book, and he's also working on Once and Future with, I think the writer is Grant Morrison. His stuff's really beautiful, and I pick it apart every time he posts something new online. I'm also reading a webcomic called Brainchild. It's about a college-age girl who suffers a head trauma, and when she wakes up, everyone she sees around her in everyday life looks like monsters. Nothing else has changed. The reality she lives in hasn't changed, but everybody looks like a monster, including there is a monster version of herself who has apparently been following her around since she was little. I think it's really cool what it's doing with the story, but I'm also really digging the kind of creepy art style to it as well.
Nice. Okay, that's good stuff. Good stuff. So, I want to congratulate you on the release that's going to happen any second now of Girlhaven. So, I want to talk a bit about that project. Maybe you could describe the story, what it's all about, and maybe the origins of the project.
Yeah, of course. No, I'm super excited for Girlhaven. It's actually it's out now. It just came out. We had a week of releases and some reviews coming in. Thankfully, they're coming in very nice. Everyone's been very kind about Girlhaven. It is essentially about this preteen kid, Ash, who has been called a boy their whole life. Forgive me, I might mix around with the pronouns for Ash, because for most of the book, Ash is called a he, is called a boy by everyone they know. But during the book, with some friends that Ash makes at school, they are transported to this magical fantasy world that Ash's mom came up with as she was growing up. It's this world of couratress. It has all of these fantasy races and this strange war that's going on with something called the Scourge. What's especially jarring for Ash is that only girls are allowed in Coratress, and all of the races are only women. And so Ash starts to question their gender and their identity, because how was Ash able to get into the world if only girls are allowed? And in this story, Ash has to become this hero that can save Coratress, but can't do that until they confront their own identity.
Wow, that's something. And no spoilers there, right? We didn't give anything away.
No, as far as I can tell, I didn't really spoil anything.
Okay.
It's been very upfront about like this fantastical world and talking about queer identity and transgender identity, and we're really trying to make it clear that this has trans representation, especially because the author Lila Sturges is a trans female.
Oh, okay. And that was going to be my next question about your collaborator on this project. How did you two meet to make this happen?
So an editor from Oni, Robin Herrera, was the first one who reached out to me. She had seen my work on Twitter and had originally penned me for a different book, but the deal for that didn't really go through. And then it turned out Robin still wanted to work with me and have me on a project, and suggested Girlhaven and kind of gave me the pitch for it. And I immediately adored it. I thought it was such a charming and lovely idea for a book. And I told her, I was like, as long as Lila is okay with, trusting this book with a cis female artist, then I would be so happy to work on this. And when it came through that it was okay, I immediately looked up Lila on Twitter and started chatting with her. We basically started talking from there and working on the book together.
Great. I want to switch gears slightly here and talk about the tools that you used to create your art. Was there anything specific you used on this particular project?
So this particular project is actually very special. This is the first comic that I've done entirely digital.
Oh.
Yeah, up until now, with webcomics or any client work, I've worked, penciling and inking traditionally, and then I would color digitally. But it kind of worked out that I had just picked up an iPad Pro to start testing out with drawing and working on comics digitally as soon as I got the contract for this book. So I was able to kind of cut my teeth with the program with this book.
What program did you use specifically?
I use a program called Procreate, which has gained a lot of popularity with comic book artists. Clip Studio is another one that's very popular, but I think for a mobile device like a tablet, Procreate is really intuitive and works really well, especially for comics. And it's been a joy, and I'm a little bit addicted to it now, I have to say.
Did you find that there was enough nuance, perhaps, and types of brushes to allow you to be expressive as you could possibly be?
So I'm not someone who actually experiments a lot with digital brushes. I think an artist who paints digitally and requires a lot of brushes for painting and coloring can probably answer to that more. But I found for what I needed it to do in terms of line art, it was really perfect for the job.
Good stuff. Now, I know that we've talked in the past about your project Godslave, and want to ask how things are coming along with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Godslave's going well. Godslave is my Egyptian mythology webcomic, and it's currently on its 6th chapter online. Last year, I kickstarted the book. I kickstarted the first 3 chapters into one large volume, and thankfully that kickstarted successfully, and I was able to fulfill it throughout the year despite capital E everything going on.
Yeah.
And I'm so appreciative of the support and trust people put in me, because it was my very first Kickstarter as well. I'm so excited to try it again with the next book.
Congratulations on that. No, it does take a lot of work talking to other creators to get a Kickstarter not only going but fulfilled, and that's amazing work. So I wish you much success in the future on that one.
I so appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Cool. Now, I noticed also on Twitter that you announced that you have a new literary agent. And for those not familiar with that role, can you describe what that particular person can do for you and how you might find one?
Sure, of course. So I have some pretty limited experience with literary agents, so I'll explain it as best I can. But essentially, from what I know, a literary agent is someone who Has a couple different functions, but is especially useful for negotiating contracts, especially for graphic novels. So if you are an artist or a writer who is interested specifically in graphic novels and getting published with graphic novel publishers, a literary agent is great not only for negotiating for higher pay for those contracts, but also there are a lot of graphic novel publishers that won't see a pitch or won't look at new creators without an agent, because it's kind of this extra vetting process of having this agent who can talk for you and kind of validate that, like, this person can be trusted, this person can finish a book, you definitely want this person working on your book.
It's great to have someone like that in your corner when you're trying to get big tasks like Girlhaven completed, I'm sure.
Absolutely. The agent I just signed up with is Renee Moore from Tobias Literary, and she's been so wonderful, even just this last week. And I'm super excited to see what we're able to do together.
Great. So we've talked about Girlhaven and Godslave. I'm wondering if there's any other new projects that you can talk about.
Right now, this year, basically just working nonstop. I'm still teaching. I'm still working on Godslave. I think the next thing on the horizon would likely be Godslave Volume 2. Well, that's still a ways away, so I have some time to put that together still, thankfully. But otherwise, I'm taking it easy and just continue on with current projects going on right now.
Sounds good. So where can people find you online and social media, find out about your current and future projects?
I have a portfolio website at meaghancarter.com. So like Mega Man with Carter.com. I'm on Twitter as Mega_Carter. And then Godslave you can read at godslavecomic.com.
That's super. Well, Meaghan, those are all the questions I have for you, but I wonder if there's something I didn't ask that you'd like to get across in this interview.
I hope people will read Girlhaven. I'm really excited for this book and the story that Lila tells. It's been published through Oni Press, and it should be at all bookstores and comic stores now. And I hope people enjoy the book.
Thanks to Meaghan for the chat. You can discover more about Meaghan on Twitter at Mega_Carter and online at megacarter.com. And you can read Godslave at godslavecomic.com. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts. And please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2021.